Welcome to this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast, episode 765. In the host, Cyril, Gerald-Quinn, discussing episode season 4, episode 4 of the hit show Snowfall. Episode is titled Expansion. Again, this was like all these episodes have been throughout the course of the first three episodes. This was again another strong episode, a very powerful episode. Has some poignant scenes in it. Let's get it started with the themes, and of course, to me, number one theme in this episode was the cost of what this drug game and chasing money and what it can mean to how it's affecting the community, how it's affecting lives, how it's affecting everybody that's involved in it. And there was a heavy cost to be paid over the course of this episode. And of course, Leon's heart. Leon, we know over the course of the first, three seasons and into this season, we know Leon is a killer. We know Leon is about that life. But over the course of this episode, Leon, you really saw another side, a humane side of one Leon, and we'll certainly discuss it throughout the course of the episode. As far as where Franklin Saint is at right now, this was episode, again, a lot of Leon in this episode, but of course Franklin Saint is the guy character who's at the heart of this entire series, and he's in a place right now where he is looking. He's looking to just become a businessman, an upscale businessman, and he's looking to. You see Franklin really in this episode very observant of his surroundings. You see I showed this picture here. He was dressed up a lot in this episode. Franklin is really is attempting to transform into a businessman, but not completely, of course, separated. Not, of course, completely separated by the drug game. He wants to expand and wants to further remove himself from the street as far as as far as possible. So that's where Franklin's head is at right now. But we'll see. We're definitely going to see the cost of that. We're going to get right into the best scenes. Opening scene, you see Scully. You see Scully identifies. Scully and his crew see that Leon and Fatback are at an eating spot, a burger spot in Los Angeles, and at the time Leon, of course, has Leon and Fatback both have their backs turned. They don't have they have no idea that Scully and Scully's crew is watching them. Leon sees Wanda. Wanda tries to sell Leon a tooth that, of course, that came out of her mouth in the previous episode. Leon, has a soft spot for Wanda. We know, gives her money for the tooth, and then walks away. And then as Leon is ordering the food, you see Scully. Drive by and attempt to kill Leon. But before that, Wanda warns Leon, and it was enough. He had enough time. It was enough time for Leon to react and not get shot. But of course, Wanda catches one. Again, I saw this coming from last episode. In regards to, I actually thought she was going to die. I actually thought that she was going to get shot and killed. But she did survive the shooting. But I'm certainly not surprised or shocked at all that Wanda was shot in this particular scene. Leon survives, and now Leon goes from the hunted to being a hunter. Now he wants Scully after Scully, of course, tried to kill him. And remember, Scully tried to kill him because of the connection that Leon has, with Franklin Saint. So he knows Leon and Franklin Saint. He doesn't know that Leon and Franklin Saint have had a fallout, have fallen out. He still thinks they're best friends, or he still thinks they're close. So anything to hurt Franklin Saint, Leon Scully's going to go after, and Leon, Leon's one of those people. So we see Wanda get shot but survive, and now we see Leon on a hunt for Scully. Franklin and Sissy have lunch with Ron Davis. This is coming off the heels of the business of Franklin and Sissy acquiring, getting a bookstore and for Ron Davis. Of course, he's impressed with this, but he is not all the way completely sold in terms of doing business with Franklin and Sissy. He knows that Franklin, the money that comes from Franklin is dirty. He knows it's drug money, but you see Sissy, basically tell him that, listen, we can launder the money to a point to where by the time it reaches you is absolutely going to be, you won't have little to any risk in terms of dealing with us. So I got the sense that Davis was somewhat impressed by this plea from Sissy. Then again, keep in mind they are at a country club, and Franklin is looking around, dressed up, has a suit on. He's looking around the country club. He notices everything, and we see a waiter come up. We see a waiter, serve the table, and it was a young man who was in college. And we see Ron Davis getting a conversation with the young man, saying, basically you'll be there for the graduation. He gives him a nice tip. Franklin briefly stares at the waiter, and you thought in that moment that Franklin might have been thinking to himself that easily could be me. That easily could have been me. That's the interpretation that I took away from it. You remember the season finale of last season, which was called Other Lives. Franklin had this dream when he had this dream state, this alternative state where his life was different, and he was in college. Being in college and the things if he hadn't got kicked out of college, maybe things clearly would have been his life a lot different in his life than his life actually turned out. So I think Franklin maybe had a flashback in terms of that. But again, Franklin and Sissy both try to reassure Ron Davis that he should do business with him. And Ron Davis, I think, walked away from that meeting somewhat convinced that he was going to continue to do business with Franklin and Sissy. Franklin and Sissy have a meeting of their own about the future. Sissy, of course, is concerned about Franklin still being involved in the drug business. She tells him basically the only reason she got involved in terms of these business dealings with him is the idea that he would completely get out the drug business. Franklin, of course, does not have, she wants to know when he's going to be out. He, of course, cannot answer that. And he kind of switches things up on Sissy, saying, look, we just had dinner or lunch with with an important man eating lobster salad. So he basically he's trying to convince Sissy that he is getting closer to being completely legitimate businessman, and that he's helping her out with against systemic racism and with the housing situation and what have you. So he, even though in the back of his mind he knows that he's only going deeper and deeper in the drug game, still trying to convince Sissy that he's on his way to becoming a complete and legitimate businessman. We see Franklin and Teddy then meet at an upscale restaurant. Again, Franklin is dressed with a suit and tie. Teddy, and he wants, he basically has the similar conversation with Teddy that Sissy had with him, saying, how long do I have to be working with you? How long are we going to, how long is this war going to last in regards to helping us basically fund the war for the Iran-Contra war. And Teddy basically says, listen, wars could take 4, 5, 6 more years. So that's certainly not the answer that Franklin wanted to hear. Franklin then says, if I can make more money, double the money, would that speed up the process? Teddy tells him straight up, if I give you a date, that would just be complete bullshit. But you know, we can always use more money doesn't hurt. So they walk away from that meeting not with a complete understanding, but with they end up toasting to the future. But neither one of those guys trust each other. And Franklin is still under Teddy's thumb. He still, in essence, is working for Teddy, and he still desires to go, not so much to go completely legitimate, but he desires to be in total control. And he knows he can never be in total control as long as he's still working for Teddy Mack. Franklin, Louis, and Jerome discuss they're back at the house at Jerome's place, or Jerome and Louis' place, and they are discussing. Franklin says, "Hey, we got to expand. We got to expand. We got to expand our business." Franklin, of course, is thinking this is going to help him get from under Teddy Mack, and this is going to help him, be in complete control. So he starts talking about places that will not be available to them. He brings up D.C., New York, Chicago as places that are already on lock with other criminals and mafia running those particular places. So so Louis has the idea of what about Little Rock, Arkansas? What about Arkansas? And so Louis is all in. Jerome, not so much. Jerome wants to just run his rim shop and not be devoid of all the violence and some of the stuff that's been going on in the street. Remember, Jerome you gotta realize with Jerome, he started out this series selling dime bags. Jerome never really wanted all of this. But he's been pulled in by Franklin step by step, inch by inch, until Franklin basically has pulled him all the way in. Jerome never wanted any of this to this level. He just wanted to sell his dime bags and keep it moving. But again, like Sissy, the money got good, and now there's basically no way out. So Jerome, of course, does not want to expand. Franklin said Jerome doesn't want to expand, considering what they're dealing with Manboy and Scully. But Franklin says if we expand, that will help us deal with the situation that we have in LA with Manboy and Scully. Basically tells him, "I got it, Unc." You see, and gives Louis instructions to start looking into Arkansas. So we see Franklin with his new bodyguard. His new bodyguard drops him off, and before Franklin can get out the car, Franklin says, "I'm going to need you for tomorrow for a particular assignment." Lerp, the name of the guy, his name is Lerp. Of course, we know him from Monk and from The Wire. He basically says, "Can't do it. I can't do it anymore." Says, "I thought I could. Thought the money could convince me, but I can't see our brothers. I can't see our brothers and sisters killing each other." And it's a very poignant, very powerful scene in the series, to be honest, not just an episode, in the entire series. That this guy, who is a military guy who seemingly has fought in wars and been overseas and fought, has had enough. I mean, he's done. He's seen enough bloodshed. He is done. He's reached his breaking point. He told Franklin he reached his breaking point. Very interesting with this particular character because, again, first couple episodes, this guy was a very quiet guy. So you thought that it was the kind of quiet that, hey, just don't fuck with this dude because he'll kill you. But if you go back and look at some of those episodes, the previous 3 episodes, he probably was thinking about this from the start. Like, this is probably something that's been on his mind since he got involved with Franklin. And certainly that shootout in the warehouse with Scully and Manboy probably was the tipping point, to be honest with you. So he's out. This is despite the fact that Franklin says, "I'll double your pay." Again, he basically pulls a Cuddy. This is what Cuddy did in season 3. If you remember when he walked away from Avon in that episode, I think it was that episode with Dead Soldiers or All Through His. I forgot which episode. It was Dead. I think it was episode 6, Homecoming. It was episode 6, Homecoming. That Cuddy walked away from Avon, and this guy Lerp decides to do the same thing. He's reached his breaking point and he's moving on from that life. Again, very powerful episode, another example of Franklin losing somebody um, at a time where, losing one of his best soldiers or losing his number one bodyguard at a time where he doesn't have a lot of muscle. So Franklin tries to go with tries to put in the full court press, but to no avail. Lerp walks away, and Franklin is worse off than he was at the beginning of the season. You go to Leon and Scully. So after Leon blew off Franklin, Franklin tried to get Leon to come back on board and try to team up with him to go after Scully. Leon says, I got it, and basically, criticizes Franklin for getting involved with those guys in the first place. But it still wants nothing to do with Franklin in terms of working with him. So Leon goes on his own program, decides to hire a private investigator. Private investigator is able to get a location on Scully's auntie, and Leon kind of says Leon kind of believes that maybe that's where he's hiding money, a place that's not out of the neighborhood, a place that's kind of low key that nobody would think to go to. So and Leon and three of his men go park right in front of Scully's aunt, and then Scully's peoples, and then Scully was not in the car. Scully's peoples pull up right next to Leon, and then all hell breaks loose with a shootout, and a number of people get hit. Leon and Fatback survive. Two of their people get hit, and everybody in the car, with the exception of a young lady in the back seat, gets hit and killed. And when Leon gets out the car to kind of finish off, at the time he thought might be Scully or another soldier in the car, it turns out to be a young lady with her holding her 9-year-old daughter who has been shot. And that girl and that lady and the woman and the mother are, of course, Scully's baby moms, and Scully's daughter and Man-Boy's sister and niece. So Leon is, in deep shit, to say the least. And Leon, of course, Leon could have finished her off, could have killed the girl, not the woman, but chose to let her go. Was completely shocked at the sight of a 9-year-old girl, at being responsible for a 9-year-old girl being killed, and just drove off along with Fatback. And we see Leon just, Leon's life has changed forever. And again, I'm on a Reddit thread, Snowfall, that talks about the show. And I know a lot of people were talking about, well, why didn't Leon shoot the woman for no witnesses? And what you have to realize about Leon and where he's at, and even Franklin Saint, in terms of where they're at, they are developing as killers and kingpins and soldiers and what have you. They are not quite there yet. They haven't crossed that place of no return. Now, I think we're going to find out this later on in the season. I think Franklin has probably crossed that place of no return, of where anybody can be killed, anybody can go. I think Franklin is much closer to that place than Leon is. Leon clearly hasn't crossed that place. We see how he dealt with Wanda, the soft spot that he had for her, and we see how he handles this particular scene, where he still has a heart, he still has a soul, and he still is somebody who is not, he's not Chris Paltrow, he's not Weebay. Right? Those guys would have killed everybody and left no witnesses. Period. Leon is he's tougher than D'Angelo, but Leon, Leon's a killer, but Leon's not all the way there. He's not all the way there. And this episode proved that. If you didn't believe it, this episode proved that. He leaves the woman alone, and again, and clearly feels guilty about what has just transpired. Now, of course, Scully, like Scully, his peoples are also crazy and dumb, to say the least. Why you would start a gunfight with his daughter and her mother in the back seat is beyond me. But again, this is how it makes perfect sense, because this is how Scully operates. Scully operates out of control. Shoot first, ask questions later. But this course resulted in a tragedy with the loss of a 9-year-old girl. And again, Leon now is in a place where he's going to be caught in between two killers who are going to, in Manboy and Scully, who are going to want him dead. And he's going to, again, put Franklin in a complicated spot next week, next episode. A couple other final thoughts. Wanda, of course, survived. Leon, paid her hospital bill and also threatened to walk away if she tried to get out the hospital. If she tried to break out the hospital or refused to follow the orders of the nurses and doctors. And you see Leon spend the night with Wanda in the hospital, as he's basically the only person that she's got that cares about her. Tenosi, Franklin's ex-girlfriend, of course, they had sex at the beginning of the episode, and so she's gotten closer to Franklin. She also gets a job at Louis' nightclub, and Louis says, "Hey, if you're sleeping with her, then I feel like if you're sleeping with her, then I figured that we can trust her." As Franklin looks at her through the blinds, a lot of people were speculating on she possibly being an informant or a cop. I don't think she is myself. Could she be connected with Manboy? Maybe. I don't think she's connected with Scully, because Scully's just not smart enough to pull a move like that. I just don't think Scully is that on that level in terms of that cunning. If she's connected to anybody, to me it would be Manboy. To be honest with you, and of course the reporter Irene gets some new information. She finally catches up, or he caught Moreno, the DEA agent that she had been looking for, breaks into her place, looks through her information, and then basically tells her that she's not asking the right questions. That the question he tells her that the CIA is funneling cocaine to the United States, and tells her she should be asking the question, why is Franklin Saint being protected? How did all those charges against Franklin Saint get dropped in the first place? So she's on a new path in terms of her investigation. Of course, the MVP is Leon. This was a Leon-heavy episode. I thought the actor Isaiah John was tremendous in this episode in terms of his performance, probably the best performance that he's given through in the 4 seasons that he's been on this show. He was the heartbeat of this episode. You got to kind of see him vulnerable with his emotions for Wanda, and also for that child that he mistakenly killed in the final scene in that final shootout. And it wasn't a coincidence that both the ending and beginning and ending scenes were with Leon, and in terms of shootouts with Scully. So again, overall, a very strong episode. I would say that, Franklin, again, the higher he climbs, the more he sacrifices and the more losses that he's taken. He loses, he's already lost. Leon and Franklin are done. That relationship is over. The question will be, will Franklin, give Leon up next week? But that relationship that friendship will never be the same. We see Franklin, we see his mom, his mother, along with Jerome. They're not on the same page in regards to Franklin's decision making for the organization. We know he can't be, him and Teddy Mack don't trust each other. So Franklin is really, somebody who doesn't, outside of Louis, you see his bodyguard walk away. Outside of Louis, who really is fucking with Franklin right now? I don't see, there's not too many people that's dealing with Franklin right now, other than for business reasons. So as Franklin gets deeper into this journey, he's gonna realize that the higher you climb, the bigger the cost. And there was some major costs over the course of this episode. Although other notes, other things to keep your eye on. There was a scene with Alton and Sissy. Alton tells Sissy about Ron Davis calls him a snake, and tells her basically to watch out for the dude. She says, hey, if he's a snake, then I'll cut his head off and find another one. So she even, that's something that Franklin would say. So Sissy is not, you see Sissy criticizing Franklin for, being in a drug game, but you also see, but on the flip side, you see Alton criticizing Sissy for dealing with Ron Davis. So she's kind of like a hypocrite from that standpoint. Again, Franklin does not want out of the drug game. Franklin just wants to be more of a upscale drug kingpin. He wants to remove himself from the street part of the drug game and get involved into, he wants to wear the suits. He wants to own property. He does not want out, he does not want out completely out of the drug game. Certainly looking forward to the next episode. Should be a big episode with Franklin having to make a decision on Leon. Both gangs, Scully and Manboy, both will both want Leon dead. So should be episode 5 should be a big time episode. That's gonna wrap it up for this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast, Snowfall, Season 4, Episode 4 expansion. I will see you next time. Have a great evening.